Hello friends, I am Dr. Sanjay V. Patil, working as Associate Professor at Savitribai Phule Pune University affiliated SNJB's Sriman Surejdada Jain College of Pharmacy, Chandwad, Nashik. Today we are going to learn about collection and organization of data. So in this video we are going to learn what is statistical data, which are the different types of data, and how data is collected and organized. So what is statistical data? So data is nothing but a statement regarding numerical facts, or data is nothing but set of observations, values, elements or objects which are under consideration. So such type of the statements regarding numerical facts which are under consideration are known as a data or statistical data. So statistical data are usually obtained by counting the atoms or measuring the atoms. So based on it, there are two types of data. One is primary data and second is secondary data. So what is primary data? The data which is collected specifically for the analysis desired. For example, by performing the experiment, the observations which are obtained are the examples of the data. For example, preparation of standard calibration curve, where different dilutions of an analyte is prepared, and that dilutions are subjected for taking the absorbance by UV visible spectrophotometer. So we have observations in the form of the concentrations along with their UV absorbances. So such type of the data is the primary data. What is secondary data? The data which have already been compiled and are available for statistical analysis. Such type of the data is known as secondary data. Now, how this data is collected? Which are the different methods for collection of a data? So there are two types of the sources depending upon type of data to be collected. One is primary sources and another one is secondary sources. So what are primary sources of collection of a data? So first primary source is observation method. The name itself implies that the data is collected by observations. Just I have told you example of standard calibration curve preparation. So we are collecting the observations, we are collecting the values, numerical values for the experiment, for the study which is under consideration. Such type of the data which is collected by this method is known as observation method. Means we are simply noting down the observations which are obtained in the form of the numerical statements, numerical facts. Such source of collection of specifically for primary data is observation method. Another source for collecting the primary data is the questionnaire method. The method in which the questions are asked and answers are collected to have the data. Such type of the method is known as the questionnaire method for collection of primary data. Suppose we have to carry out a particular survey, so we have to prepare a questionnaire. So what is questionnaire? The format in which a specific questions are asked to collect the responses, to collect the data. That type of the method is known as the questionnaire method. And the third source for collecting the primary data is the interview method. Just by making just by making the oral conservation with each other the data is collected. Such type of the data or source is known as the interview method. Then another source for collecting the data is the secondary source. Specifically, we are collecting the secondary type of the data. So various sources by which the secondary data is collected are in the form of published literature or reports. Means already that data is readily available. Such type of the source is known as the secondary source for collection of data. So various examples of secondary sources include census report, government reports, well-established magazines, research journals, review journals, medical journals, research papers, review papers, PhD thesis, annual reports of companies, and reports published by research institutions. All are the examples of the secondary source of data where readily the data is available. Now once the data is collected, how this collected data is organized? That is nothing but organization of data. So the data which is collected must be organized in a systematic manner so that we can use such organized data for inferential analysis, where we can draw some conclusions, interpretations from the collected data, and hence systematically organization of the data is very important aspect in statistics. The unorganized data does not convey any meaningful information, and hence whatever the data is initially obtained, such type of the data is known as raw data or ungrouped data, which is a set of unorganized data. And to convert this unorganized or raw data into organized form or arrayed form, there are two steps which are required to be followed for data organization. The first step is forming an array. What is array? Array is nothing but the data which is arranged in its ascending order or descending order. And second step is creating a frequency distribution table. So by following these two steps, we can organize the data systematically. So what is the arrayed data? Arrayed data is nothing but if the set of data is organized in either ascending order or descending order, the data is in the form of arrayed data. And from the array, one can get some useful information such as which is the lowest data value in the observations, which is the highest data value in the observations, etc. For example, we have these three observations or three numbers 4, 2, 5, 1, 3. So these are randomly organized or randomly present. So such type of the data is known as raw data. And if we have arranged these numbers, these observations in the form like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is ascending order, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is descending order, such type of the data is known as arrayed data. So conversion of raw data into arrayed data is very important for systemic organization of the data. So to understand how the raw data is converted into arrayed data, we will consider simple example. Consider the marks obtained by 20 students of a class in a class test out of 30. And these are the marks obtained by 20 students: 12, 11, 15, 18, 25, 22, 18, and so on. So this is the raw data or ungrouped data. Let us arrange the data in its ascending order or increasing order. Then we have 11, 12, 15, 16, 16, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 19, 20, and so on. So such type of the data is known as arrayed data. So from this we can come to know that which is the lowest value of the observations, which is the highest value of the observations, which observations are repeated, how many times the observations are repeated. So raw data is converted into arrayed data for its organization, and from that we can come to know another statistical parameter or statistical term, that is range. So what is range? Range is nothing but the difference between the maximum value of the observations and minimum value of the observations in the given data. So if you consider the above example, what is range for the marks obtained by 20 students out of 30? The lowest value of observation is 11 and the highest value of observation is 26. So 26 minus 11, so 15 is the range for given data. Another aspect which is used for organization of data is the frequency distribution and frequency distribution table. So what is frequency? Frequency is nothing but the number of times an observation is repeated in the given data, that is known as frequency of that observation. And the table that arranges data into several classes by considering particular value as a lower limit and upper limit for the class, we can have class data for frequencies. So all classes must have lower limit as well as upper limit, and when we have to consider the frequency distribution for the given data, two questions are very important. First one is how many classes to select, and secondly what are the class limits. So by considering these two questions, we can prepare the frequency distribution table, and these are the 5 important steps which are considered for construction of a frequency distribution in the form of table. So the first step is determine the number of classes. How many number of classes we are going to include in the frequency distribution table or in a given data. Then once we have decided the number of classes, what is the size of each class, that is to be determined. Then we have to determine the starting point for the first class, means what will be the lower limit of the first class, that we have to determine. And then in fourth step, we have to tally the number of values that occur in each class. And finally, we have to prepare a table of the distribution using actual counts. For example, consider a data set of 26 children of ages 1 to 6 years. Then the frequency distribution of variable age can be tabulated as follows. So this is the frequency distribution of age. So age 1 to 6 and number of observations for each year are given in the table as frequencies. So for age 1, 5 observations or 5 children are there, hence the frequency is 5. For age 2 year, frequency is 3. For 3 years, frequency is 7. And similarly for 4, 5, 6, the frequencies are 5, 4, 2. But if we have to condense this data in the form of the classes or group data, then we can prepare the groups or classes as per the steps required. What will be the lower limit, upper limit of each class, how many number of classes to be included, accordingly we have to condense the data. So to condense the data, suppose we have considered 3 classes, number of classes to be considered are 3, and lower limit and higher limit are having interval of 2 for each class, then we can condense these 6 observations into 3 classes by dividing age groups from 1 to 2 as a 1 or first class, age group 3 to 4 years as a second class, and age group 5 to 6 as a third class, and appropriate frequencies are for 1 to 2 8, for 3 to 4 years 12, and for 5 to 6 years the frequency is 6 by combining frequencies of respective ages. Again, we can go for cumulative frequencies of the classes. What are cumulative frequencies of the classes? Cumulative frequencies are nothing but the frequency of that particular class or particular observation along with frequencies of previous classes or previous observations. And if we consider these values, and if we have prepared the table, such tabular form of the data is known as cumulative frequency distribution table. So in this way we can systematically organize the data to analyze or to test the data in the form of the frequency distribution table or in the form of cumulative frequency distribution table. So that is all about what is statistical data, what is source of the collection of data, and finally how the collected data is organized. So thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you all.